Guys, finally I decided to do a battery drain test. Let's check how 90Hz and 120Hz screens are draining out batteries compared to 60. I think you're interested too, so fasten your seatbelts, let's start. I already had a similar video on the channel with POCO X3 and Redmi Note 9 Pro. Today the test will be very similar. Let's see what smartphones will show. I want to tell you right away how I will do this test. Well, firstly, POCO X3 NFC, POCO X3 Pro and Samsung A52 participate in this test. That is, I have 3 smartphones, I emphasize, not 6, but 3. Therefore, I will have to suffer and drain these phones twice. First with an increased Hertz screen and then with a reduced screen frequency for old phones, 60 Hz. And then I will render 2 videos together, and at the output you will get a video, well, probably for about 10 minutes. And you're lucky, you won't have to suffer at all. Therefore, guys, push the like button right away for my efforts. I will be very pleased. And subscribe, but only with a notification bell. Always with the bell, in order for the test to be as close as possible, so that this video makes sense, and to make it easier for me, I will do each of the tests exactly for an hour. Thus, it will be easier for me to repeat everything twice. By the way, the lowest maximum brightness that I measured for these 3 smartphones is on POCO X3 Pro, 400 nits. POCO X3 NFC is 430, but Samsung has 530 nits. I adjusted the brightness of the screens to 400 nits so that there were no questions, so as I always say, everything is fair now. The software has been updated to the maximum. These are the firmware versions that are currently installed and some specifications with the battery's milliamp hours. Guys, in the comments write who will be the winner today. Your opinion is interesting to me. Please strike something in the comments. And the first thing I did was YouTube for 1 hour. Yes, it was muted, because I would probably die if it wouldn't be muted. Yes, of course, the increased hertz is not involved here, so in an hour we should see similar results. So after an hour, I see that Samsung is leading. And the next test I'll run for an hour is Chrome with infinite zoom. There is a site, zoomquilt.org, where the picture is infinitely zooming. In this way I simulate internet browsing, and here, guys, 120 and 90 Hz already makes sense. Therefore there must be a difference in battery drain. What do we see in fact after an hour of this test? I honestly didn't notice the difference, and it's strange that, for example, Samsung showed generally the same result. And guys, I also want to know the temperature of POCO X3 NFC. Just by touching the smartphone, POCO X3 NFC is the hottest after this test. It's weird that it burns out its battery in vain. 2 hours on the scoreboard, and the next thing I thought of was video recording with the main camera in 4K. Yes, all these smartphones can do this, and this is a rather energy consuming test, so let's see what remains of the batteries. Xiaomi, as always, has an 8-minute limit for shooting in 4K. The Samsung doesn't, and by the way, you can almost fry eggs on smartphones, especially on POCO X3 NFC. It is the hottest, and this is what shows the battery charge after half an hour. 76, 67, 68, 70, 66 and 76. Its battery has lost the most charge, and after another half hour in the end of 4K recording, we got the following results: 66, 52, 59, 61, 52 and 65. Samsung 60 Hz is in the lead. Then 3 hours passed and I start the game, which is, as I thought, supports the increased hertz of the screen, and this is Alto's Odyssey, I don't know how to call it. It was very boring for me to play on all smartphones, if you also take into account the time of 10 o'clock in the evening, then 1 in the morning, you understand? So it was quite difficult for me, and here are the results after an hour: 54, 34, 46, 48, 35, 53. And I thought, what the hell is going on? Why there is almost no difference in the battery consumption? But I had to continue what I started just because there was no turning back. Next, we launched the application that destroys brains of humanity. It is TikTok. And then I just rested. Even though it was already late, nothing really needs to be done. Videos themselves start in a circle. Well, sometimes I change them, and after a full hour, the scoreboard showed 5 hours, and the percentages were as follows: 44, 18, 34, 32, 17 and 42. Samsung is in the lead. The next thing we will run is A52 test, which should eat up the batteries well. The first A52 lap was successful and the POCO X3 Pro scored the most points, which I actually expected and it was obvious. The second in performance is POCO X3 NFC and the third is Samsung. The second run of A52 was not successful. At the screen of POCO X3 NFC 120 low percentage of charge alert popped up, so I stopped the test and started it again. POCO X3 Pro in this lap has already scored fewer points than in the first lap, but the Samsung 90 behaves stably. The POCO X3 NFC is already a very weak battery, and when the scoreboard was 5 hours 47 minutes, POCO X3 NFC 120 left us, and after him only after 2 minutes the POCO X3 NFC 60 also died. After an hour of A52 the scoreboard showed 60 Hz. Two candidates have already left us, so we have 27, 0, 12, 10, 0 and 25%, and then I started CPU throttling, which eats out the batteries pretty well. And during this test, exactly at 6 hours and 30 minutes, X3 Pro 120 said goodbye, and then after 15 minutes the X3 Pro went out. The difference is really small and I already understood why it is so. 7 hours on the scoreboard, only Samsung are still alive, respectively 8 and 5%. When Samsung has 5% left, it drops the brightness to a minimum, but I won't let it do and I increase it back. I launched the final test. This is the Asphalt 9, and after 21 minutes the Samsung 90 Hz gives up, and after another 14 minutes at 7:35 Samsung 60 Hz leaves us, and today's winner is Samsung in both categories despite the fewer milliamp hours, but with AMOLED screen. Well, what about my conclusions? Yes, I want to admit that it was not entirely successful test this time, because I was mistaken and the increased hertz was not used in the Odyssey game. I confused it with another Altus adventure game, therefore I cannot call my test 100% successful. So much time was wasted, but it's a pity that this time I have to admit my defeat. But it's not all that bad. Something useful I still learned from this video for myself. I hope this video was interesting and useful for you also, guys. Of course, these results do not quite correspond to reality. In real battle the phones show a different on-screen time, and here of course everything is approximate. Guys, I hope you liked my video. My name is Evgeny. If you didn't know, subscribe to my channel with the bell if you didn't yet, and have a nice day. Всем добра!